Hey, deserving listeners. In today's episode, I am interviewing Jeymi from 90 Day Fiancé. Jeymi and Chris, if you remember from a recent season. And I thought I'd play a little teaser clip right here.
And this is my point, and this is why I'm so mad. Because, and I can't believe the people listen to True and listen her too many times. And the people look at me and say, you used Chris. Say, really? This is the reason why I'm mad.
And I'm really looking forward to this interview because if you watched my reaction videos, you know that I was thoroughly confused about this couple. I never really know what's going on with the couples on this show, of course, but usually I have enough to work with to have some hypotheses about what is actually happening. But with this couple, I did not really feel that way. I could clearly see that they were very angry at each other and maybe very hurt, but I couldn't, either the story was, one person was completely to blame or the other or both. So I'm really looking forward to talking with Jeymi and asking her these questions. I'm glad to talk with you, actually. I have so many questions. What prompted you to reach out to me?
I look at your video and say, oh my God, it's the first time I look at very objective person talk about this, because sometimes it's very funny or very, I don't know, but it's no objective. And I say, oh my God, I liked your videos.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. I always worry about that. As soon as you DM'd me, I was just like, oh my God, did I say anything that bothered you? Because I always worry about that because I really don't want to say anything that hurts anyone's feelings or bothers anybody.
No.
So you and Chris are not together right now. Is that what I'm hearing?
No. I'm single. I think my relation with Chris is broken. I'm very far away, Uh-huh. She disappeared for 1 month, and in these moments, I look other woman. And I think she received the text for this woman, my relation is broken. Because she trying, or she tell me, I'm okay, this is the other chapters, okay, this is a new moment. But she never believed that. She never forgive that,
So you're saying that a long time ago, before you were on the show, you were dating, but you hadn't met each other in person yet, right?
Yes.
And then she disappeared for a month, as you talked about in the show. And yeah, I could imagine that being really hurtful and worrisome. You're DMing her, you're reaching out, you're calling her, and no response.
It's frustrated because I'm trying to I'm text her and say, hi, how are you? Are you okay? And other situation, I feel worried for her because she disappeared. She no answer for nothing. And I remember in this moment, I'm talking with her mom and say, are you okay? Chris is okay. I'm trying to tell her and she don't answer me. But she say, no, yes, she's okay. She's working.
So you had contact with her mom and her mom confirmed that she's okay and could respond, but is choosing not to. Because it'd be different if she were in the hospital or something, right?
She disappeared too many times. She disappeared one time. She disappeared too many times. And I remember the first time she disappeared for 3 days. I talk with her and say, hey, how are you? I'm okay. And she no answer anymore. I remember my grandma's birthday is June 2. She answered me one day yes, one day no. And I text her and say, hi, how are you? Today, my grandma's birthday. She no answer me. Okay. And, I live in Colombia. I'm from Venezuela, and all my family living in Venezuela. My grandma is from Venezuela. And I have a video call for all my family because in this moment is COVID. Hi, are you okay? She no answer me. I say, okay, this is normal. 3 days later, nothing. 10 days, nothing. And hey, how are you? What happened? And in this moment, I only talk with Chris for 3 months. And I think she no like it. Maybe she say, no, Jeymi is not the person for me. And I confused because she tell me I like the men's too, and say, okay, maybe she not like the idea for other women. This is not for her. It's okay.
Well, what do you think she was doing?
She never told me what happened because I remember, and she told me, I'm sorry, I have financial problems and I feel so bad because I can't go from Colombia with you. And I say, okay, I understand because I understand. It's normal, okay? Maybe she feel very embarrassed about this and she don't feel comfortable say, I'm sorry, Jeymi, I can't go. And I understand and say, it's okay, don't worry. But the next time, please tell me. I'm your partner.
She disappeared for a number of times, sometimes a month, sometimes 3 days, sometimes longer than a month. Do you have any idea about why this happened?
Never. No, never. Because the next time talk with her about this, she tell me and feel very scared about how feeling with you because you are beautiful, you are amazing woman with me, and I'm nervous because I have a feeling with you. Okay. In the show, she'd say and disappear because she need attention, she need too much, and is too much for me. And really, I no have idea what happened for these days.
Do you believe her?
In this moment, I don't believe her. She arrived in Colombia, she changed. But in my mind, I'm trying to say maybe it's because is nervous about the filming because she arrived in here and she have the camps all the time.
What about her issues with her back and her neck? Do you believe her regarding what she was saying there?
I don't have idea she have these problems. I don't have idea. I remember in this moment in the car, she crying for the pain, and I'm crying too because I don't know who say that, but I'm crying because I never look one person crying to the pain so hard. You know, it's so hard pain, and you crying is incredible. Is I say, oh my God, I think I know prepare for this. I believe her in this moment. I believe in her. Yes.
Do you still believe her about the neck pain?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's too much lies, and I don't know. She tell me too many lies, too much, and I think it all say for me is lies, and I don't know everything. Who is true? Who I don't know.
So some people speculate that she would disappear for long stretches of time. She would disappear for a month because she was having problems with drugs. Do you think that that's a possibility?
I don't know. I don't know because I lived with her for 1 month, and yes, I look her take a pill, but she have a problem for the narcolepsy, and she have too many pains, and she have too many problems. And in this month, I'm living with her all month. I'm filming, and I never look her and say, "What do you take? Let me see who is this pill." I never is know my position. I believe in her, but I don't know.
So you only had 1 month of being with her in person.
Yes, because she here in February and she go for April 2022.
Okay. So you met online in 2021.
Yes, February 2021.
So all the way back in February 2021. And then in June, she disappeared.
Yeah.
You continued to date after that. But you said earlier that when she got that text or that DM from that other woman who was saying that you were texting with her during the month of June of 2021, this other person was saying to Chris that Jeymi is scamming you. And you're saying that really hurt her, that really hurt Chris, and she never was as warm towards you. She could never let go of that. And then you're on the show in April of 2022 for a month, and then she went back to the States.
Yes.
And then she came back for your birthday.
No.
Oh, that's right. She missed your birthday. She came back in August for how long? How long did she come back for?
3 days.
3 days. because you guys had a fight, and then she went
Exactly.
back. She went back to the States, and then you filmed the tell-all in 2023.
Yeah.
Okay, so since summer of 2022, you've been single.
Yes, I'm single right now. And all the time I'm single. The person tell all the time, you need forgive and continue. And this is no easy. This is no easy. Because right now I meet a person and I don't believe in one person, you know? And I meet other person. I have friends lesbians, and she say, come on, look at my friend and say hi. But I can't. I'm in therapy right now. I feel better right now. I feel better. Okay. But I don't feel comfortable for trust the other person. It's hard.
Yeah. I can totally understand that. From your perspective, of course, what you experienced was a lot of things that happened, a lot of things that she did that you can't explain. You don't know why. And was it because she had a legitimate reason, like a real reason, like she was suffering from something and she was ashamed? I mean, that doesn't excuse it, but it does explain it. Or was she cheating on you? Did she ever love you? You know, there's a lack of information, so you don't know.
Exactly.
You don't know what to think. And either way, she didn't inform you. Something got in the way that prevented her from reaching out to you and telling you what was going on. And also something prevented her from apologizing about it, because from my impression, when you would see her, she would just say, it's no big deal, like, don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Well, what do you think it would take for you to heal so that you could maybe date again?
I need time for me feel security about everything.
Mm-hmm. When Chris came in April of 2022 for that month during the show, the two of you had plans to have a food truck, and you had quit your job, from what I remember. So what was that plan?
She said, I have 2 houses and I'm sell 1 house.
She was going to sell one of the houses.
Yes. And she tell me that and she say, maybe go to the food truck, because her dream is a food truck. And she say, maybe this is my opportunity for create a food truck. And because I'm talk with her and say maybe, or no, a food truck, maybe a little restaurant, but in the house, and go to the deliveries. And I'm okay. I love cooking and I'm very good cooking. I like that and say, yes, come on, good. This is a very good opportunity. And I like it because you can come here in Colombia and you can have job very fast. This is the first. And I remember she say, I don't have money right now for buy the food truck. She say, I don't have money for this. Everything is down. And I say, but I know quit for my job. I continue for my job because I pay my bill. I pay the bills and you pay the apartment. And okay, in my plan, never have quit. Never. But she's sick and I need filming, and she's sick, and she say, please, quick.
Please what? Quick?
She say, you need to get out to the job, please.
Oh, quit. She's telling you to quit. She's telling you to quit your job.
Exactly. I'm sorry. Yes. In this moment, because she's so sick and I can go to the job because she knows speak Spanish, and here in Colombia it's very difficult. The other person speak English. You
had the job when she came down, and then she asked you to quit the job because she was sick all the time and she wanted you to
be. Exactly.
I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out where she was coming from, because maybe she was just very optimistic. She just thought everything's going to be great. I think
she no plan. She no have a very good plan for coming here.
I'm wondering, because you were online dating for a year. I'm wondering what it was like. What did you love about her?
I don't have anybody and tell me, are you okay? How are you feeling? what happened in your day. In the first moment, the first 3 months, I called with Chris. She is this person. She called me all the time. Are you okay? What happened in your work? And what happened in your job? And how you feeling? And you look beautiful, or what you want? What are you doing? And I like that. I think I know the person and say, oh, she no looking me. I like it more. No, I need attention. You send me attention, I look at you. And she sent me this attention. And I remember, and she disappeared for 1 month. And this woman, she changed. But she changed a little. For example, she called me all mornings, but she no answer me in the rest of the day, only in the morning. But in this moment, she asking me about everything. What happened to your job? What happened yesterday? Everything's fine. And what happened for your friend? She asking me all the time. And I like that. I like it. And she is very cute, and she is very funny in this moment. And she's a very good person in this moment. Later, this man, her ex-boyfriend, sent me text. She changed too.
Her ex-boyfriend said to
Send
you
me
that
pictures and video in October 2021. For me, is too much. But I think she say, okay, I'm a mistake, you are mistake, and go continue our life,
Remind me, what did the ex-boyfriend tell you?
He texted me, and I remember in my job, and he texted me, and I called Chris 3 times, and she no answer. So it's very okay, normal. She disappeared all the time. It's normal. Go to continue my life. I have a one messenger with him, and say, "Oh, you're trying to call for my girlfriend? She's busy." And he sent me a video, and I remember, I made me crazy, and I'm trying to call Chris, call. She no answer. And this night, she answered. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm very busy. I have a very bad day. Okay. But for me, the more hard is I look Chris with the same clothes she used in the video. And she trying to tell me everything is lie. Everything is lie. This clothes is very old.
You're wondering if the man could see that you were calling because he was with her and knew that you were calling, because he messaged you saying, I know you're calling, Chris. Stop. She's with me now. Here's a video of me and her together. And then later that night, you see her and she's in the same outfit.
Exactly. The same outfit. And I feel bad, and I say, okay, you have your stake, this is my stake, okay, continue your life. And this is very funny too, because, and I remember for talk about 90 Day Fiancé, and talk with her, okay, please, I don't talk with your ex-boyfriend. Please don't talk to the woman in Texas. And say, okay, great, good. I like that. I like that because this is a little problems, but no affect our life, okay. But she looked the cams. Immediately, she talk about the woman in Texas. And I continue my promise and say, I not talk about your ex. But I'm talk with your ex because I'm so mad in the tell all. Because in the filming, the tell all, in all tell all, she trying to say, I'm cheating too many times. And I feel really bad. I'm really, really bad. Because this is not true. And I feel so mad. And I say, oh, why you not tell about your boyfriend? This is the only moment I feel really, really mad and I say this.
So you're telling me that in 2021, during your first year of online dating, she disappears for a month. Both of you said she disappeared for a month. Then you move on with your life and you start to talk with other women. And then Chris comes back and you stop talking with other women, and this woman in Texas reaches out to Chris and says, by the way, and Chris is very hurt by that, but you're trying to tell her, well, it's because you disappeared for a month and I thought that you had broken up with me. I thought you ended our relationship.
Exactly.
And because we had only been dating online for 3 months, so that's weird that you would just disappear, but I figured it must be over without any indication. Okay, so that's why I was talking with her. And then in about October of 2021, still in that first year, you get this message from this man who takes this video of Chris, and it looks like it might be true what he's saying. And then she's saying it's all lies. Then the two of you at that point agree, when you go on the show, that you're not going to talk about either of those incidents. And she talks about the Texas woman right away, but you say, well, I promised, so I'm not going to talk about it. But then at the tell-all, it's more and more of that. And then finally you say, well, what about the man that messaged me?
Exactly. Because I can't believe, I can't believe the one person is say lies and tell you lies in your face. And you know who is the truth. And she continues say other things. And this moment I say, oh my God, she have a mental problems and she's sick.
So you were telling me that after the Texas woman contacted Chris, you noticed that after that point, Chris wasn't as warm and loving towards you. Then after this man contacts you a few months later, were you kind of worried now?
Rona, she called me and she said, I'm so sorry, this is not true, this is lie, like this, because she's a very good liar, and in this moment she prepared a very good liar, and I believe in her. Right now, and I go to pass and I say, please don't continue to talk to the woman Texas Jeymi.
When did the show contact you?
Maybe August 15, maybe August. And in this moment, she called me and she said, look, you know who is the show? And really, I know me the show. I never watched the show. I'm never watching the show. And I say, no, I don't have idea of this show. And she say, what do you think? She talked about love in other countries. Say, okay, good, you go, okay, this is okay for me, I don't have problems. And I never believed the show called me again. And I remember I received an email with answer a question and send pictures, okay, and send you and go to the interview. So say, okay, go to the interview is good, okay, continue. And I like that, I really like it, I'm so excited.
Did they contact Chris, or did Chris contact them?
No, Chris contacted them. She called for the show, she called for the producer, she called everything.
So she told you that she called 90 Day Fiancé and said, I would like me and my partner, Jeymi, to be on the show.
Yes.
Why did Chris want to be on the show, do you think?
Chris is very fan of the show.
She's a big fan of the show?
Big fan of the show, yes. Chris is a big fan of the show. I think maybe she don't work for men and trying to more interesting is for women, maybe.
Sorry, are you saying that you think that she usually was with men, but then was wondering what it would be like, and maybe not actually bisexual or actually gay? Is that?
Okay. I think that this is no true, or this is no. I don't have certification for that. No, I think that maybe because I'm sad, or maybe because I think what happened is. But I think too many times maybe because she say, I'm not lesbian, I'm bisexual. And maybe she is no lesbian and no bisexual. Maybe you are straight and but you think go to the show, but it's more interesting history for women. I don't know. I think that too many times, or a couple of times, I think maybe she trying to do this, or maybe, but I don't know. I don't know. Is I don't have security for this. You know, the only security is my part, the history. In my part is I don't have idea about the show. She'd call me and she'd say, go to the show, and say, yes, go to the show. And I really love in everything in the show. I meet a really Chris. Yes, in the show, I meet a really Chris.
Mm-hmm. Are you happy that you went on the show?
Yes, I'm really happy. I'm really, really happy.
So that by the pool, when you're talking about your birthday, I'm just wondering, was it because you were sad that she missed your birthday, or were you trying to talk about how she lies sometimes about
Everything? In this moment, I have a glass, and in this moment, I have too many things. But first, why you lie to me anytime? Second, why you don't send me money? 3, why you not send for my birthday again?
That makes a lot of sense to me, because at the time I'm thinking, well, she missed your birthday, it sucks, but it's not the end of the world. But the things I was hearing in terms of how they edited the show, it was money, birthday, but a lot about money. But what it seems like what you're saying is that it was more that you wanted to know what was real. You wanted her to admit the truth, not necessarily to, you weren't yelling at her to get money. You're just like, I don't trust you. I don't understand why there's all these inconsistencies. And I don't feel safe. And so where is this? When did this happen? And where were you? And how come these are? And so just to reiterate, she never told you any story as to why she because that other time she disappeared for a number of months, right? Like 3 months.
I don't have this history. I don't have the reality.
So on the show, she says that she was gone for 3 months because her son was in prison, but you could always text you if she's busy, right? Did she say anything else as to why she disappeared for 3 months?
She say she work. I need money because I need money, but send me. But she never sent me money.
Did she say anything else?
I don't know.
Which, did she say she was angry at you, or did she say she didn't want to talk to you? Look at this.
For example, she called to me in June. Hey, what happened for the money? And say, oh, I'll send you tomorrow and never send me nothing. And I remember I say, oh my God, you need to understand, and I'm immigrant, and everything is I'm for my name because I'm immigrant and I have paper here, you don't have nothing, and I have problems and I don't pay the rent. I have problems here for immigrants, and she don't understand that. And I say, okay, no, you can tell for this man, and okay, I don't want to talk anymore, block.
She would block you.
And I remember, yes, in this moment, I'm tired and I don't care, block me. It's okay. And I tell to the other person, please, I need money for paying my rent. Okay, send your money. And I pay everything. But she don't pay my rent. And the first episode, Chris Foster say, I disappeared for 20 days. And say she disappeared for 3 weeks. No, for 1 month. And I say that all the time. And I remember in the tell-all, she said, I'm disappeared for 5 days. And this is my point. And this is why I'm so mad. And I can't believe the people listen to truth and listen her too many times. And the people look at me and say, you used Chris. Say, really? This is the reason why I'm mad. For example, so many times followers text me, haters text me, you used Chris. Say, you watching the same show? Because I'm watching other show. In this episode, she said, you need who say you no work anymore. I think it's 3 episodes. I don't remember right now, but I think she said that. In the other episode, on the last episode, she say, she no wanna work. In other episode, she say, I'm disappeared because I have personal problems. In the other episode, she say, I'm disappeared because she needs too many attention. Who is the truth?
Mm.
And I remember I say that one day in life and say, it's very difficult remember all your lives. Because you say one line, you remember, and say this. But you say too many lies and forgive and confuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you forget all the lies.
Exactly. And I see that. But it's important. I see that for the show.
I'm really sorry that you went through all this. The more I'm hearing, the more I understand why it would be hard for you to trust other people, because you want to believe, you want to connect, you hope that you can hear the truth. The lies, it would really mess with your head. Yeah, I could see how it would take a long time to be able to trust someone else, for sure. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so that's the end of the interview. I have taken some time to think about everything that Jeymi told me and to digest it all, to talk it over with my wife, because she remembers things about the show that I don't remember, things that we saw. And I have been taking some notes here, actually. And I will say, though, before I get into my analysis or reflection on everything that I heard from Jeymi, I will say that it was very satisfying to me to be able to talk to a cast member, because so often, as you know, I am wondering what's happening, or I want more information. I'm used to that. As a therapist, I have copious amounts of time to get into it with people and gather years and years of conversations and data, and it's very satisfying to me. But anyway, so I thought I would get to my hypotheses, and I took some notes here. And I want to be clear that these are just hypotheses, meaning that they are guesses as to a conceptualization. And I'm saying conceptualization because that is the proper term we use in our field, meaning that it's not a fact. You know, when you're weighing two objects like my phone versus myself, I put the phone on the scale, I put myself on the scale, we look at a number, and then we find that I, in fact, weigh more than the phone. That's not a conceptualization, that's a fact. But when it comes to human beings, especially when you're involving a couple with two human beings, we can't say that person is this or this person is wrong or that factual thing is that. It's all based on memory and recall and opinion and clinical experience. We're conceptualizing something. Okay. So an hypothesis is a possible conceptualization that you might pursue if someone comes into your office. When people come to therapists develop hypotheses that they investigate, and then they arrive at some sort of conceptualization at some point as to what is the problem and why the problem exists. Someone comes to me with depression. I guess they come to me complaining that they have low motivation and they can't get themselves out of the bed in the morning. And so I do an assessment. I might diagnose them with major depressive disorder, but why are they depressed? Is it because of biological reasons? Is it because of trauma? Is it because of their current life? There's a whole number of things, sleep, diet, all sorts of things that might contribute to the presentation of the depression. So that's the conceptualization, and that requires a lot of data gathering. The following are just initial hypotheses based on a reality TV show and 1 hour and a half conversation that I had with Jeymi, meaning that I don't know if any of these are true. And even if I were treating them, I still wouldn't know they're true, because as a therapist, I never know quote unquote truth. I just have to land on something to drive treatment. That's the purpose of a conceptualization, is to drive treatment. If you know the factors behind the depression, then you treat the factors. You don't just treat the depression. You figure out what is the factor leading to the depression. You treat that, the depression goes away. So the first hypothesis is not one that I would find likely to result after an assessment, and that is that their conflict is a result of common misunderstandings in relationships, particularly during divorce. When I talk to couples as they are divorcing or after divorce, if there was a lot of conflict, and with Chris and Jeymi there was a lot of conflict, then you will hear very interesting things, and the individuals will be adamant about their story. When you go through a divorce, it's very stressful. There's a lot at stake. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of anger. And as we're filtering everything through our self-preference and our emotions and influence from outside, two people will have very different stories, and they can treat each other very badly and believe that they're either completely justified or they don't even remember that they were awful to the other person because they just edit that out of their memory. So with Chris and Jeymi, it definitely has that look. But given what we're hearing, it doesn't really look like that. But it could be. I just want to put that out there. The other hypothesis I'll put out there, and I'm not happy about putting this out there, but it is an hypothesis, in that we're hearing indications of an individual who on some level might be lying pathologically, meaning that they lie even when it's obvious that they're lying, and they compulsively lie. They can't help that they're lying. There's different definitions of pathological lying, and I hope to do a deep dive on it at some point because I want to absorb all the research. So if you go with Jeymi's story, or even 80% of it, what it looks like is that Chris is lying upon lying upon lying upon lying. Now, what does that mean? There's a number of sub-hypotheses to this conceptualization. Is that, let's say that she was in love and she was a psychopath. That happens. You can have someone that moves through life without caring about other people's emotions. They lie because they don't care about other people's emotions. They also like to get away with things. They feel entitled. They feel like the world is their playground regardless of how. It's sort of like if you play a video game with a lot of NPCs, and like Grand Theft Auto or something, and you're just driving a car down the street, and oops, you grab a Funyun or something, and your controller gets a little wonky, and you run down 10 people. You're just like, anyway, moving on. Psychopaths aren't that bad, but they're in that direction. They just, it's like, I'm playing a game, and this is, I'm going from A to B, and those people got in my way, and I don't know, I don't really care. So for people who suffer from this disorder, they can have, Chris, from afar anyway, she fits a particular profile of psychopathy in that, and I'm not saying she has it because we don't have enough information. What we're potentially hearing from someone that was involved with Chris for a long time, that there is a pattern of lying upon lying upon lying. Like, for example, if we believe not only what was presented to us on the show, but also what Jeymi is saying, like after the 3 months of disappearing that happened around Jeymi's birthday. So this would have been after they're married and they had been dating online for about a year. Chris comes down, they get married. Chris bolts and has some excuse. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there's a lot of speculation as to what the real reason why she left, right? And then she disappears. She doesn't text, just completely off the grid for Jeymi. Then we hear from Jeymi that Jeymi is talking to her mom, and the mom is saying, yeah, I don't know, she's at work. So it's not like the mom is saying, oh, she's in the hospital, she's in a coma, right? The mom is saying, yeah, I mean, she's out and about. There's nothing unusual about her life. And yet Chris is not texting at all. So then Chris on the show, and according to Jeymi, even behind the scenes, Chris is her initial excuse, if I remember right, was I was working because I was trying to earn money to pay you. I was trying to, you were demanding all this money from me. Okay, so if we go with that, that's not a typical line of reasoning for an individual, right? If you're upset and you're hurt, you don't necessarily just completely go off the grid for 3 months to your wife, right? If they were a distant cousin, okay, but you just got married, she is your person, you can't text at all. So one hypothesis is that she just doesn't care. It just doesn't register. And for these individuals, they often will have a train wreck of a life. It's not like the movies when people con people, they work their way up the ladder. And there are some examples of that. But most commonly, psychopaths, they shoot themselves in the foot. They have poor impulse control. They'll be violent too quickly right in front of a police officer. They might be violent with a police officer. They will lie when it's so obvious that they're lying. Psychopaths, they go too far because they don't really understand how everyone else works, and they don't care to know, and they don't care even if they did know. They just don't care. They're just like, I don't care. It's like that, oops, I'm getting a Funyun, my controller goes off the thing and I run down time. Anyway, the question that the NPCs might say is, why don't you practice getting a Funyun while also keeping an eye on the steering wheel such that you don't run down 10 of us? And you say that to a gamer and they'll be like, I don't really care. I don't care about this game enough to practice that. I'm just a Funyun. Who cares? Just 10 NPCs, whatever. So underneath this hypothesis are several sub-hypotheses. One is that if Chris was a psychopath, which I'm not diagnosing her with that because I don't have nearly enough information, is that Chris also was in love with Jeymi. People on the internet and in popular television will depict psychopaths as incapable of attachments and love, and that is not true. And what is love, as the song goes? It's one of those things that you can't really measure, right? You just have to gather enough information to try to figure something out. But for some psychopaths, they don't have empathy for other people. They feel entitled. They have poor impulse control. They use other people. They're very exploitative of others. And they have, at least to some degree, a desire for attachment and love in the same way that non-psychopaths will, right? So that's one hypothesis. The other hypothesis is that she's a psychopath and she doesn't, she either does have the capacity for attachment, but she doesn't love Jeymi. She could have just been using Jeymi from the very beginning, which, as I'm hearing Jeymi's story, and of course it's just her side, that started to emerge for me. That usually does not emerge for me when I'm watching these shows. It's in there as an hypothesis, but it's such a rare event. But when you hear the story, you hear that Jeymi meets someone online, and in the United States, they are online dating for 3 months. Could a psychopath be convincing enough for 3 months? Absolutely, especially online. It's not hard to text. It's not hard to do some video chats, especially given what Jeymi was saying, that she felt very lonely. Any amount of attention would have felt like a relief to Jeymi, which she talked about. Then she disappears for a month. No explanation, no text, nothing, just off the grid. Then she's back and she says, hey, how's it going? And then Jeymi's like, what the hell? They get back together. Then Jeymi's dating partner during that month contacts Chris, and Chris gets upset about that. Okay, again, I'm sure you're annoyed with me constantly having these caveats. I'm not diagnosing Chris with psychopathy or any social. So the next category is drug addiction in terms of a possible hypothesis. It is very common, if you've ever had someone who suffers from chronic drug addiction, alcohol addiction, it's very common. It's a very common profile. And I'm pretty sure I talked about this in a reaction video. For some of these folks to have this pattern where they just disappear. And when they get back, they act like nothing happened. And why would someone with a drug addiction do that? Well, a common conceptualization that I will land on when I assess individuals and treat individuals like this, there's a part of them that knows that they cannot kick the habit. They need to be using, and they might have a pattern of binging and not using, a month of using and then 3 months of not using. And it's almost like they live two lives, and they might even have different parts of their awareness, even though if you really, grilled them while they're in the 3-month period of not using, they would be able to remember that they tend to binge and that sort of thing. But their conscious mind might operate on a level that they're in total denial of that. Denial is a very common defense for all of us, but particularly for people with drug addiction, because they observed it in their family. It often is passed down through observation, and they will have a really hard time with shame and with facing their problem. And they might have tried to work on it, but they have failed, and they feel like they're a terrible human being. Often trauma is involved in this as well. And when they're not using, they're just thinking, the only way I can hold on, the only way I can survive is if I just don't think about it and I just deny that it happens. And so they might operate as if they're a completely different person. They're not a completely different person, but they're operating as such. So they go into the binging usually from a trigger, but sometimes it's just a matter of time. And then they go into a different mode where they think, okay, I'm using, I'm failing, I'm a terrible human being, but this feels so good, and I'm numbing out, and I deserve this. But what about Jeymi? She's probably waiting for me at home. I should probably call her or something. One reason to avoid that is out of shame, because you just are so ashamed of yourself that you can't expose your loved ones to your shame. You might even feel like you're protecting them from your horribleness. Another reason for this is that the individual who's binging, they don't want any reminder that they have a problem. Often for people that have addictions, particularly, I guess, bingers, they will hang out with a completely different set of people who probably also have problems with substances, if not that exact substance, because it just feels better. You already feel horrible about yourself, and it's taking a toll on your body and your mind and your life. But because you're compulsively driven to use this substance, and you also have traumas that are creeping in that you need to clamp down on with your substance, you're trying to survive in both modes. You're trying to survive in the sober mode, and you're trying to survive in the using mode. And so you just want to forget. And any reminder that you have a problem, or that maybe you should address this, or that you should stop, or there could be consequences to this down the line, you just, again, go into denial about it. When you're not using, you're denial about your use. And when you're using, you're denial about your sober life. You're just like, I'm just going to put my head down and use. And people will say phrases to themselves like, just one more day. I'll call them tomorrow, or later today. Everything will be, they'll be okay. And just a little bit more time. Well, if you keep kicking the can down the road, it could blossom into a month or 3 months or even longer. So they get in this mode, and they're just like, I just can't face it. Then something will happen. Maybe they hit bottom, or they run out of money or something, and they turn it around and they say, okay, I'm not going to use, I'm going to clean up, and they go back to their life. Well, now they're faced with this very difficult situation because they don't want to lose their people. They need their people. They absolutely need that. But they're in such a busted up place about the whole ball of wax, and they're so ashamed of themselves, and they need the substance so much, and they only know of one way of solving their trauma as it starts to distress them with substance and numbing it, that the one strategy that they often will land on is just don't say anything, and just forge ahead, because if you say stuff, you'll have to talk about it. Plus, you don't really have a good excuse, which actually, now that I think about it, this lends itself against the hypothesis that Chris was a psychopath. Because if Chris were a psychopath, she would be much more comfortable and experienced and competent at lying to Jeymi. She would have elaborate, psychopaths tend to have very convincing lies and long stories, because they've been lying and tricking people, learning how to trick people since they were young children. They're very effective liars and very good at charming others and getting other people to believe them. So with Chris, her reaction is more in the profile of a drug binge than of psychopathy. But the problem is, even when you have these people in your life, and I've had them in my life, even when you're right there, you're experiencing it firsthand, there is such a black hole of information. And another detail of people with these problems is they tend to be standoffish with information about anything, because they just learned, in order for me to sustain my drug abuse, I need to stop revealing anything about myself, because that gives my loved ones something to grab onto, which they can use to discover that I'm using, which will lead to me having to face the fact that I'm using, which will lead to me being ashamed of myself and maybe even having to go to treatment. And I don't want to do that, because that's never going to work. And I need this substance. And what about my trauma? It's a panicked feeling. People often frame these things as like, I'm going to use my drugs and I'm going to screw you over. It is a panicked feeling that these individuals have, and it's real, and it's not unjustified. The fact is they don't have treatment is the problem. They don't have the proper team of treatment providers around them, or they're not ready for sobriety. It's a whole other thing. But anyway, so if Chris were a psychopath and it wasn't necessarily a drug binge, then when she got back, she wouldn't be like, well, I was just working because you're constantly pressuring me for money or something. Chris would have and the other thing that psychopaths will do is they are effective at getting people to lie with them, right? They're not only getting other psychopaths potentially, but tricking people into lying, right? They'll say like, hey, like if Chris were a psychopath, I'm just making this up, she might go to her mom and say, Jeymi is abusing me, even though she's not. Jeymi's abusing me, so I need you to, if Jeymi calls, or when 90 Day Fiancé cameras show up, I need you to say this story about why I was gone. I was gone because I was scared. I thought she was going to kill me, but I need you to don't tell anyone about that, because then she's really going to kill me and she's threatening my kids. And please, Mom, just don't say. Okay, that's manipulative, right? And psychopaths, because of their track record, and they're always on the take, they know to do those kinds of things. They know also how to be convincing, and maybe even who to intimidate to go along with a lie. Like a psychopath might tell her mom, hey, and also if there's any kind of question here, I just want to point out that I do know about that thing that you did 5 years ago. Psychopaths are pretty good about retaining that kind of ammunition to manipulate others. And then when Chris came back, we would have heard a much more convincing story in all likelihood. It doesn't mean she's not a psychopath, but it's a pretty big tick in the column that she doesn't have psychopathy and that it might be addiction. So anyway, I hope that you understand why someone would disappear for long. There are other reasons. There's more elaborate ways of discussing it. But if you've ever had someone in your life that was like this, you know what it's like. It is marked. It is difficult. It is confusing in the beginning. And you love the person. You want to help them. And the other thing that people with addiction will often learn over time is when they get sober, they don't go home right away. They take some time to clean themselves up so that, again, there's no indication that they were using, and they can just say, well, what? I don't know. Sometimes I just like to disappear, or so I just was trying to get my head together, or I just really had to think about things, or I just went on a road trip and I just wanted to put my phone away, these kinds of things. So it definitely had that look to it. And I would put that near the top, if not the top, leading hypothesis as to at least one of the reasons as to why things were happening. The other hypothesis that I'll throw in here, which is kind of an add-on, which could be involved in addition to everything I've been talking about, is there is some minor evidence of cognitive deficit, meaning that when she would have her excuses, they wouldn't necessarily make sense. Her stories were seemingly inconsistent even on the show. And you can't imagine what Jeymi went through in terms of all the stories that she heard. So it's possible that, for example, with narcolepsy, those folks can experience some major memory deficits and issues. Now, you would think that if someone had this problem, they would just admit, I don't remember, what did I say? But if you're terrified that you're going to lose your partner, if you reveal that problem, then you might try to cover up the fact that you have this problem, especially if you have shame about your diagnosis. But another issue is similar to ADHD, which is also a potential reason as to why memory would be an issue. But similar to ADHD is that if she had narcolepsy and memory problems as a result, when she was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, she's getting in trouble a lot with homework or chores or forgetting the rules or wandering off, seemingly defying rules, seemingly not being responsible, seemingly just rejecting any kind of guidance. But really, she might be forgetting things, and she might also be in and out of symptoms such that she's not even fully conscious all the time. There can be that with narcolepsy. Anyway, and because she doesn't know what's going on with her and no one else knows what's going on with her, they punish her, which is a very common response to children. And then that can escalate to the point where a child, and be chronic enough where a child thinks, I'm a terrible kid. That almost always happens. And so that can develop a syndrome for the kid that can cause a whole cascade that now you're a teenager and you're just like, screw the world. I don't listen to teachers. I don't listen to parents because I need to protect myself, because even when I'm trying, somehow I always end up screwing up and everyone ends up yelling at me and I'm constantly being punished and all the other kids seem to be fine. And I guess I'm just a terrible person. Fuck it. I'll just lean into that and I'll just advertise myself as a terrible person. I'll start skipping school. I'll start using drugs. And so for those individuals, they develop a pattern of obscuring. There's a lot of different ways of coping with it, but they still have attachment needs and needs to have a life. But since they don't know why they're having these problems, and they might even think there's something deeply wrong with them that's just inherent to them, then they feel like, well, the only way for me to get people to like me is if I don't really reveal who I am. I have to obscure things constantly in order for anyone to like me. That's just the default. Now, once they're an adult, that might not necessarily be true. Once they're out of the context that was oppressive to them when they were children, but they're still applying the same coping mechanism, right? So it could be because of narcolepsy. I don't know the course or the symptoms. I don't remember her talking about memory problems. Also, brain injury. She talked about having been in at least one car accident. So to me, after thinking about everything that I've heard, everything that I've seen on the show, and this is often something that I'll do clinically, especially in situations like this where there's just all this data and it just feels so hard to sift through. I will often try to find something that I can grab onto so that I can say, okay, that it's hard to explain away with other hypotheses. And the one thing I can point to is that she did disappear for weeks at a time, that 1 month period and then that 3 month period. And there's no debate about that. Everyone agrees that Chris would disappear for a span of time. Okay, so that's important, right? Because whenever you get the PayPal thing, that's still a question mark. I'm leaning a little bit more towards Jeymi after talking with her, but there's not enough data. I would have to, in order for me to feel satisfied about what really happened, I would literally have to call PayPal and they would have to send me the records. And even then I wouldn't necessarily know, but I would know more, right? So everyone agrees that Chris would disappear. The other thing that we can look to on the show and Jeymi, and also just Chris recalling what happened, is that Chris's explanation about having left for spans of time, disappeared, were agreed upon, right? Jeymi and Chris both agreed that, yeah, what Chris says is that her son was having legal problems and she was upset, that Chris was upset with Jeymi because Chris needed to work all the time to pay for the bills. Okay. And there's some nuance there, but it's not like Chris is saying, no, I told you this elaborate story. And Jeymi's like, no, you didn't. They both basically agree on those events. And when I hear that, that's something. And because Chris's explanation about that is so weak, that's something to grab onto. So again, why would Chris just disappear for long spans of time? That requires some sort of explanation. There's something going on with Chris, and probably has nothing to do with Jeymi. So that requires some sort of conceptualization that is about Chris and has nothing to do with Jeymi. And if we believe most, if not all, of what Jeymi is saying, and we look at the big picture, the exploitation, or at least the mistreatment of Jeymi, is significant. Again, if we believe her account, the mistreatment by Chris, potentially mistreatment by the show, mistreatment by the public. Jeymi, according to her, was looking for love and finds someone and falls in love and just wants to get married, just wants to have a fairy tale love story that happens to be filmed. She doesn't even know about 90 Day Fiancé. And then this person, and Chris says, hey, 90 Day Fiancé, let's do this. And Jeymi's like, okay. And then immediately starts experiencing all these very weird, inconsistent things. Jeymi is trying to communicate in English when it's not her first language. She's trying to express herself. I got the impression that if she could go back, she would say something like, look, it doesn't matter about the money, about the rent stuff. I'm just confused as to the whole damn thing, because I don't know what reality is, because you say this and this happens, you disappear, and then you say this. I'm so confused, and I'm very scared because I'm wondering if you're scamming me. I don't feel like you are, but there's some evidence that you are. And I'm worried about the future. I'm worried about your intentions. I'm worried that if you really love me, and even if you do, I'm worried you're going to, what? You disappeared for a month, for 3 months. Next, you're going to disappear for a year? That's terrifying. Am I going to wake up tomorrow and you'll just be gone for another 9 months? I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Again, I'm not diagnosing. I don't really know, but I feel like I have a lot more information to jump off from and say stuff. I'll also say that this is the first time I've ever done this on this channel, so let me know if you like this sort of thing. And also, if you know any cast members or you are a cast member and you want to talk with me, I'd like to talk with you because I got one of the, 10 major reasons as to why I became a therapist was because I like to do this kind of thing. I like to ask questions and try to figure things out. Maybe it's my preference for order in the world. I see confusing behavior and I want to know if there's anything I can say as to why that would happen. I know enough to know that I never know really why, but I want some idea as to why something is happening. And when I have something to grab onto, it feels satisfying. And maybe some larger goal that I am always chasing is that I want to believe in humans. I don't know if you notice, but my conceptualizations tend toward at least the non-hostile towards the individual. People say that I'm being nice to people or wholesome or empathetic or compassionate or something. And sure, but the way I see it is these are solid explanations because there's no research to suggest that people are, generally evil. And there's lots of research to suggest that people are trying their best and they want to do right by others. And they also want to do right by themselves. And we have a lot of traumas and oppression, and we learn bad lessons from bad models. We have a lot of factors that are playing into our motivations that can mess things up. And when we can understand that, then it tends to be nicer to the individual than what typically is said about, people look at Chris and say that she's a scammer, right? And it's possible, but it's much more likely, given percentages and statistics, that it's some other reason that is less of an indictment on her as a human being. It still doesn't excuse what she did, but it perhaps to some would look more compassionate, but to me would look more accurate, really, and more likely is the thing based on science, is what I'm saying. So I find that it is satisfying for me to do that. And when I watch these shows, I'm guessing you could tell that I'm like really trying to figure stuff out. And maybe that's why my YouTube channel is appealing to some people. And when I can finally talk to the individuals, though, that's when a lot of that satisfaction actually is met, right? So, because, whenever they're interviewing, the producers are interviewing the cast members, and they actually ask a question that I want to know the answer to, I'm like, oh my God, they asked that question. Let's watch. And, it's great to see that, but it's usually kind of brief and it's edited. So I would love to talk to other cast members. And I would like to think that even if Chris came to me, I would like to think that I would find a way not to throw them under the bus, not because I'm trying to lie for them, but because I often find that there are understandable, relatable reasons as to why people do harmful things to other people. Like if I were to talk to Chris, I wouldn't be surprised if I found my way to a very satisfying, justifiable hypothesis that Chris has a very understandable road to where she ended up. If it was drug addiction, it's often trauma related. You often hear a progression, like they use a substance when they're 13, or they're prescribed something when they're 13, and all of a sudden they feel better and they're confused and they know that might not be good, but they don't know what else to do, and things just get worse and worse and worse. And the shame, and it's relatable, it's understandable. It causes a lot of harm around them, but it's not like they wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to screw over everyone in my life. So even if Chris came on, I'm guessing that we would, if she wanted to talk with me, I'm guessing we would find something like that. That is my life. When I talk to clients, you're witnessing, I guess, what happens. It's complicated, it's deep. People are generally good and are complicated and are redeemable. And when you see that enough times, like I have and other therapists, then you tend to just assume that there's something like that behind the bad behavior. Even when you're on the bus and there's someone like screaming at someone or even being violent, that's what I see. I'm like, oh, I wonder, it doesn't make it okay, but I wonder what's behind that. And I'll never forget the very first time when I had that notion was I was actually getting off the bus in Seattle by the Aurora Bridge, if you're familiar. And the bus driver just started screaming at me. And I just was, there's like 3 or 4 people filing off the bus. And the bus driver started screaming at me. And I turned around and I thought, oh, she must be screaming at someone else. And then it was clear she was screaming at me. I was like, huh? And I remember thinking, there's no possible way I deserve what she's doing right now. I just remember thinking, it was a very uncomplicated process of me sitting up or standing up at the bus stop and walking off. Maybe I put the thing in the thing, or I grabbed a transfer. I don't know. And I just stood there. I was like, what? And I had this why in the road where normally I would just start screaming back, or I would grumble, or I would, I don't know, just be like, that person is a horrible human being. What a da 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 da. And but this time I had this new branch on the Y in the road, whereas before it was just a straight line. But now I actually had an option, and I stopped myself and I said, it's just this is the beginning of my career as a therapist, and I said, oh, something's behind that, something redeemable, something that I would understand. It doesn't justify it, and I'm a victim of it, and that's not good. But there's a reason for that. There's an understandable human reason as to what led up to her doing that to me. And I thought, I'm different now. At the age of 27, I just thought, oh, I'm a different person now. I feel it. I have a new way of interpreting the world and moving through the world. And 25 years later, here I am in front of you. And everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.